Okay guys, as promised in my first video on the new Warhammer Quest Darkwater box set, I promised you a whole series of video on how to get it painted up so that your set does not have to sit under the bed gathering dust. It gets to be built, it gets to be painted, and you get to play through this amazing campaign. So the first video I'm going to put out for this is the awesome new Nurgle Demon Prince miniature, which is obviously the big bad of the entire board game. And I'm going to show you how to get that guy painted up to quite a nice high standard without too much faff, and you will be very delighted with your results, or so I hope. Before I get into that video, just a huge thank you to all of my active supporters, everyone with their likes, videos, comments, subscribes, and of course all those awesome people out there on Patreon who help keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. For you guys, obviously we get a lot of extra special treats, such as extra videos every single week, extra podcast episodes. You get access to a private Discord server where we do kind of painting competitions and community showcases, and we do extra giveaways every single month. Last month we gave away a knight. This month we are giving away a Real Space Raiders Battle Force for Dark Eldar. So if you want to get started with an awesome army of those, then make sure you are subscribed to the Patreon at any tier, apart from free, obviously. Okay, with all that faff out of the way, let us dive in and get this awesome Demon Prince painted. Okay, we're going to begin this video with the finished project. This is what he will look like at the end of this video. If you stick with me and have a little bit of patience, I will show you how to paint the model up like this. My models go through quite an extensive ugly stage, which I think can turn some people off kind of halfway, 2/3 of the way through the video, and they don't see the kind of result that they're hoping for. So hopefully that little clip at the start there made you think, maybe I'll stick around and see what he does. So the model was sprayed with a nice coat of like a bony color. So I used Wraithbone spray. And then after that, we started throwing on the base coats to basically block in all the colors for this model. So we started with a Plague Bearer Flesh contrast, and we're aiming for all of his armor panels across the body. So obviously he's got a big, huge cuirass on his chest. He's got some bits that come down and protect his flanks, like armored feet and knees and stuff like that. So just basically go through, try and find all those different sections and block them in with Plague Bearer Flesh. From here, we move on to Guilliman Flesh, and we're going to block in all of his skin. So he does have quite a lot of gross skin on show. Half of his chest is on show, his arms. His belly is protruding from the bottom of his armor plate, doesn't quite hold his magnificent girth anymore. So it is spilling out of his armor. So you want to make sure to get that base coated in as well. Agros Dunes, that nice kind of sandy bone color, was used to base coat and block in all of the bones. So obviously he's got some hooves on his feet. We got those done. He's got little sharp nails on his hands. And then obviously he's got the big huge antler horns coming out. So just block those in with the Agros Dune color. We then move over to a Black Templar for a few different areas. I decided to do the kind of fur pelt that's coming down over his back as more like kind of fly fur, if that makes sense. So I just did it in a nice coat of black, and it looks really nice because obviously the white base coat underneath and then the black on top actually just makes it look like really nice highlighted fur, and it's really not. It's a single coat of contrast for now, and it just looks great. Volupus Pink was then used for all of the kind of cloth areas. I'm going with very much like a Death Guard scheme, and I like the Death Guard scheme being that kind of Volupus off pink color for his cloth, the handle of his sword and the handle of his flail. The kind of leather wrappings will also be done in that nice pink color as well for a little bit of unity across the model. Gore Grunta fur was then brought in for his kind of leathers. So he's got a leather belt, obviously holding on his nice charms. There's a little bit more up around his kind of neck area there, holding his other armored like shoulder panels and stuff on. Just anywhere you find any leather straps you want to do as well. I had a little bit of a debate as to what to do with the fly wings, and in the end I decided to just make them black. So the Black Templar that was already on our palette, I just used that up and painted in all of the wing sections in black. But you can see all those extended like membrane sections I did in the same green color as the armor. Now it's metallic time. We have 2 metallics to get through, so Balthazar Gold and Lead Belcher. And we're basically just going to go through the model and try and find all those different sections and decide yourselves which ones you want to do in the bronze color and which ones you want to do in the silver color. So I went for most of the like iconography in the dark bronze, and then things like the chain and the chainmail and obviously the blade of the sword and stuff done with Lead Belcher. Obviously, when you're painting things like chainmail, I always like to add just a drop of water into the metallic so it flows a little bit better and gets into all those recesses. Otherwise, it just takes too much time. And same with the chain coming down off the flail. If you just have like, you know, Lead Belcher from the pot onto like a dry palette, it's going to take forever to kind of get in all those nooks and crannies. Drop of water just helps it flow a little better. Even the sword has all these kind of imbued faces in it, which make that kind of flowy metallic just work brilliant. With that, we pretty much have all of the base coats on this miniature. So now it's time for that all over shade. And for this, we're going to go for a nice dark brown wash. I think I went for kind of brown tone from Army Painter for this, though I didn't show the particular pot of paint. Mainly don't think I have a good Agrek Search Shade right now, which is a shame. But obviously you can just throw Agrek Search Shade over this. I'm enjoying all of the kind of shade paints from Army Painter right now, so I've been using them a little bit more. When that's all fully dry, it's time to start the layering process, and the armor panels are quite an interesting way of doing it. So we start with Death Guard Green, and we want to go for a nice scratchy highlight across those armor panels. You can see I've got a fine pointed brush and I'm going in there, and I'm not going with brush kind of strokes. I'm going with kind of like those like little sharp motions just to get those little lines across the armor panel. And we're going to do this and across all of the green, and it should look kind of bland a little bit after this first coat. There is like a magic step later on which fixes everything and looks really cool. It's kind of like my own invention, so if you want to stick around for that, it's pretty cool. But yeah, just take your time, be careful, try and get as much kind of scratchy texture as you can across the armor, and all will be good. When we move over to the next color, which is Nurgling Green, we're going to do the same process again, but obviously just less. Little scratchy highlights, more of a distance between each brush stroke, and then obviously a more kind of textured approach when it comes to the bigger, flatter panels will give you a really nice result. So you can see here, I'm leaving the shadows nice and dark. I'm going in across those kind of bright, flatter areas and just creating that texture. Now for the magic step, we are going to introduce the green armor to a yellow kind of a glaze paint, Lamenter's Yellow Glaze. Now, Games Workshop does not sell Lamenter's Yellow Glaze anymore, which I think is quite silly. But if you want to grab the Too Thin Coats Yellow Glaze, it is an exact copy. I have done this scheme with that exact color. So if you really do like this, you want to go forward and do it yourself, but you're struggling to find a yellow glaze, just know that Too Thin Coats does actively sell a yellow glaze, which is perfect. So you can grab a bottle from there. 1 bottle, 2 bottles will do an entire army, so don't worry. But once the yellow glaze goes over the armor, you can see how poppy it looks, how kind of gross and decrepit and nurgly that it looks. And I really like that result. Now it's time to move over to the skin. So we're going to start with the first layer of highlighting being Cadian Flesh Tone. Now, I know I'm going with a slightly more bizarre tone for Nurgle skin, in that I'm going with kind of like Caucasian skin, but it will be very kind of ruddy and like flushed and diseased looking and unhealthy. And I think that'll be really cool. I want these board game pieces to belong to that board game. I don't want to match it to my Nurgle army or anything like that. And I really like painting this technique. I think it looks really good. So I very carefully did the first layer on the skin. Obviously, when you're layering, all you're trying to do is avoid the kind of deep recesses and accentuate all the higher points. After that, we go to Berserker Bloodshade. Now, the Berserker Bloodshade, I always work Berserker Bloodshade off of a wet palette, so it's technically thinned a little bit. And then we apply this all over the skin. This will give it that kind of red, sore look to the piece. It'll settle into all those recesses and give you really nice kind of shading and shadowing. When that's fully dry, that's when we go in with the final highlight on the skin, which is Kislev Fesh. Obviously, once again, I have the extra small artificer layers, kind of finest point brush you can get your hands on. And I'm very carefully working around those details and just highlighting as I go. Kind of the eyebrows, the nose, the cheeks, Obviously all those big blubberous folds that are around his neck and stuff, we're going to very carefully highlight. This is a centerpiece model for the boxed set. When you're doing the kind of the pox wretches, the 14 of them, you won't put as much time as effort in. So don't think that it's going to take that long for these guys. But the effort you want to put in is in these kind of like the characters and the champions for the game. I really do love the results that we got with the skin. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. And I was more than happy to kind of spend that little bit of extra time to get it looking like that. You Shapty Bone for the first highlight on obviously his hooves, the nails on his hands, and obviously those big kind of deer antlers which are protruding from his head. We're going to get those done and highlighted. Taking your time, being very careful. Like I said before, leaving those recesses nice and dark and just hitting those higher points with the highlights. That's all you need. Learning to paint well, not that I consider myself to be a particularly good painter, but learning to paint well is as much about kind of learning what not to paint over as it is what to paint over. Do you know what I mean? It's a skill that you just have to learn by doing. Screaming Skull is the final highlight for all those bone sections. You go in on a fine line on those hooves, and then just such tiny dots on things like the nails, and then up on the antlers. It's just the very kind of highest points are going to get hit with those sections. Those two last colors we did, that use Shapty Bone and that Screaming Skull, I also used both of those colors to highlight his little teeth and stuff. So as crazy as that is, it's just, yeah, you just take your time. Mornfang Brown, very quick highlight on all of those leather belts. Doing the kind of cross hatch method to make it look like leather, which means you just do those little streaky lines and then you change to 45 degrees and then do those little scratchy lines again. So you're basically doing like X and O X's all the way along, and it just gives that kind of imitation of the leather. Screaming Skull and Pink Horror were used for highlighting the cloth. So basically it's a 50-50 mix first to get the kind of mid-tone, and then it's obviously like 80-20 with the Pink Horror at the end for just that last little highlight to make those details pop. Like I said, this is the Pink Horror, like that's 80% Pink Horror and 20% Screaming Pink. So you can see it's almost pure pink, but you can see the kind of, the amount that I'm putting on is quite, not a lot. It's just the kind of little streaks. You leave all those deep recesses nice and dark. Lead Belcher was then brought in to highlight all of the metallics, both the bronze and the gold sections, or the silver sections of this model. I'm actually highlighting the kind of faces of the sword, which is really cool. And then going in and highlighting all those other bits. There's also another step that I'm doing with the Lead Belcher paint, which is I will be going along the kind of edges of the broken armor and just adding a quick highlight to that, but that's in a minute, I'll show you. Nilic Oxide is then brought in, one of my favorite technical paints by Games Workshop. Nilic Oxide and Blood for the Blood God are two paints that everybody should have in their collection. And next time you're in your Games Workshop, your Warhammer stores, and you've got a little bit of cash left over, I recommend picking up those two pots of paint. They are the best technical paints on the market. You just add that little bit of oxide into cracks and crevices for all of the kind of bronze area. It makes it look really old and ravaged, and there is no better blood effect on the market than the Games Workshop one. I've tried them all now, and Blood for the Blood God is by far the best. This is that silver bit that I was talking about. I see it going along those edges of the cracked armor and into some of the recesses, just to make it look a little bit more scuffed and a little bit more worn. And with that, we will have our first finished miniature for the Warhammer Quest board game Darkwater. I really love the final result I got on the big bad. I literally am frothing at the mouth to get other models done from this set and get enough done so I can start playing the first few scenarios with my friends. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. You're looking forward to more videos for Darkwater. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I'll see you in the next one.